So menu maintenance, if you're used to looking at legacy back office, is a mixture of terminal screens and button maintenance. If you're new, then it is where you are going to define your button layouts, how the screen looks. Everybody kind of gets their own template. They like the way that things flow. So you'll have your own template created. Again, it's all about these modes here in the middle. And I believe I think I've had a menu maintenance sheet, quick guide. I think that should be in that pile there, but it's going to tell you about, give you some details about menu maintenance. If not, there's definitely one on the portal. So layout mode is the old legacy, like terminal screens. It's going to be the layout, and it contains the controls on how your screen is laid out. The preview mode is a preview of what it's actually going to look like on the front end. Hidden mode is how we create macros on the front end. So we do have a macro function, one button to do multiple functions. Okay. There is also, you also have your screens over here. So for instance, on my front end, I have my supervisor screen here. So my screen is my layouts. So I happen to know that my layout is going to be this ultra black server 3. And my section is my manager. My common menu for us are the buttons that are across the top and also across the bottom. And my menu is supervisor. So this is what the layout looks like. This is where I know how my buttons are positioned on the screen. Okay. If I go into preview mode, this is what I'm seeing on the front end. So the cool thing about this is I can actually click on this button here, and I can go over here and I can change my function. So if I wanted to fingerprint an employee, I could come down to my button function of fingerprint employee, and I get some other options under here. Now, again, anybody who's used to working with legacy, this is going to be anything that was under your edit function data. Okay, so in FuturePOS, as far as our button functions go, we have 150 different functions for button. Within those functions, you can have multiple options beneath those. Okay, and those would all show up below here. You can have your minimum security level. Now, your minimum security level is going to reflect on the employee security level in employee maintenance. So obviously, the higher the security level on the button, it's going to be a higher security employee. Okay, so you got to make sure that they match. In my dealership, we felt 1 to 5 was perfectly satisfactory. Everybody got to do 2. 5 was a manager, required a supervisor ID. You can go up to 99 if you feel wild and wacky about it. Okay, that's kind of a you decision. Okay, just make sure it all works. One thing we had talked about earlier, if you are doing security levels, we talked briefly about having a card to do specific functions. Somebody asked me about a void card. We talked about over here about a refund button or cancel sale button where you need to have a card. So if you're going to do something like that, you have to kind of think ahead. So maybe that void card or that canceled sale function or refund function, those might be things that you would want to set to a 99 and then have your managers a little bit lower than that, because you can't really go higher than 99 on the buttons. And if your manager is already a 99, the void card thing won't work because you need to have it higher than the employee who's signed in. Okay. So again, back to my function, fingerprint employee. I can come up here. My background image gives me my fun shiny button. I can come in here to my text box. Fingerprint The other thing about back office web, if you're used to using legacy back office, the text box was Control Enter to drop down. That's not the case in back office web. Okay, you can go in, you can change your font, do all that fun stuff, and then we save. So that's how you create a button. Down here, these are our what we call common menus. So if you want to change anything down here or anything on this top row, since this is a common menu, you would want to make sure that your menu is set to whatever your common menu is. So if you wanted to create a new menu, you can click on any of these buttons. You can change your function to go to menu, go to menu name. Can't create a new menu through here. Well, so we already have a pizza menu. Again, your common menu, you want to make sure if you're creating a menu that you do have a common menu in there. If you don't, you won't have any menu buttons on the bottom, and then you're kind of like stuck. You'll have to like Alt F4 to kill your process. And your register screen, again, your register screen is going to be your layout, which is going to be this. And again, you just add some text, save it, and then you have a new menu. You can change the layout. So if you don't like the layouts, I need to do it in layout mode. So over at the top, we have the customer name. If they don't want to see their customer name, you can click and drag this off. And this is a little bitmap. We can click and get rid of that. Actually, we'll get rid of all this stuff. These are just little like tags at the top for customer name. This is my receipt. I can click this and drag this up, and I can make this taller if I want. Take up more space. Okay, so you can configure it however you want. The nice thing about FuturePOS is our layouts are configurable. You're not stuck to a single layout, and I believe some POS systems are. Like that's your layout and you can't change it. FuturePOS isn't like that. You can do any resolution that you want. So the Windows tablets, if you're using Windows tablets, you can create resolutions for whatever your tablet sizes are. A couple years ago in the office, we had a 42-inch ELO touchscreen for a trade show that ELO had sent us. We were the only ones that were able to do graphics and a button set for it. So, I mean, we had buttons that were like this big, super cool. But we were the only ones that were able to do it because you can do any size resolution. You can make the buttons any size that you want. You can move things around. 200 by 200. Yeah, they're not any size. You're limited to 200 by 200, but you know, you're not limited to this 105 by 55 in this data set that we gave you. You know, I've had customers that want the receipt on the right and the sell item buttons on the left. So you can flip that layout around. Okay, it's just a matter of moving things around. Okay, you know, some people want the menu buttons at the top instead of the bottom. No big deal. So it's a matter of reprogramming a few things and moving it around. If you want to create something new, you just start from new. And you can start building. Okay, so you can come in here, you can add some bitmaps if you want. We're going to talk about auto menu here in a bit. You can add buttons. It's just a matter of clicking and dragging and add them wherever you want to. Okay. auto menu. So auto menu is how it allows us, it basically puts the items on the screen. So for us, again, this is one more reason that we need the naming convention to be really tight. So if I come down here to my appetizer, screen 26, so you can see here are all my items on here. And if you look at this control, this is actually an auto menu control. Within this auto menu control, you define what items you want to see in there. So when you're adding things to the grid, it works off the X and Y axis, but you can also click and drag and maneuver it around, which will probably be a little easier to do. And then you can kind of tweak it with this X and Y. So you can kind of move it to the left or to the right or wherever you need to make it look pretty. You can define how many rows of buttons that you want in that grid and how many columns of buttons. Now, this is the way that I set mine up. Now, for the newer dealers, there's a blue template that is on the portal that is set up a little bit different. This is the way that I have set up my auto menus. This is the template that I used because this gives me more control about where things go. The blue template has, I think, 2 auto menus, one for a bartender, one for a server, and it's all built off of departments. But we all know that, you know, somebody might have wings, which alphabetically that shows on the last item, but they may want it as a separate line item, or they want it at the top of the auto menu, or, you know, wherever. This gives me a better, gave me better control. So within this auto menu grid, you define what you want to show on there. I always used item name because, again, it gave me more control. So I say, okay, I want item name, anything that starts with an APP. And again, we also respect the wildcard of the star and the question mark. So anything that starts with an APP goes there. And again, this was nice over the older way of manually doing it through buttons, because anytime somebody starts with an APP, it's going to automatically show up. And again, this is one more reason that you want to have a really nice, tight naming convention. So that way, when you're teaching your end users, as they add things, they're going to go on the screen where they should. By default, anything that is flagged as a modifier will not show on the screen. And in the item maintenance, under the item flags, it says item is a modifier. So anything that has that box checked or does not have a receipt description is going to be flagged as a modifier and will not show up. Okay. So if somebody does add an item and they're freaking out because, oh my gosh, my item is not showing up on my auto menu, either it's flagged as a modifier, check to make sure there's a receipt description, okay, and also check the naming convention. Chances are they did one of those 3 things wrong. There's also an auto menu setting that we'll talk about tomorrow that would be one more reason that it might not show up. But chances are those are the 3 things that you're going to run into. Show quantity available. Again, we talked about quantity available in item maintenance. So if they want to see that from the front end on the button, that's a huge thing in our area. The bottle, everybody wants to see how many bottles of beer that they have. So show quantity available. Usually you're going to just leave this as replace item buffer and process as buffer name, so that way they're selling. You can also change the graphic on here, so you can define do your background image. You can set this to whatever pretty color you want. Okay. If you are doing logo buttons, you probably want to set them to white, and you actually have to set the logo on each individual item. All right. Employee messaging. This is actually really cool, and this was something I really wanted to show you guys because it's kind of a visual thing. Employee messaging is actually something, it's a big selling point, and this is actually one of the things that is really used a lot through the system. I think this is like one of the coolest features we have. So you basically, you give it a name. You have some options here. You can show it clock in, show it sign on, or message is repetitive. And I do train end users on this because it's used a lot. And I tell the end users, like, if you really want to be annoying, check all three options, and you're just going to annoy your employees. So we're going to do show it sign on, and we're going to come in here. Welcome to FuturePOS. And we're going to save this. Once it is saved, you can come up to the gear and you can add some employees. And I'm going to do my programmer, and I'm going to do my manager. We're going to save this. Okay. All right. So if I come to my front end and I sign on as my programmer, I get my message, they can print this out. If you do not set it as repetitive, okay, so if I don't set this as repetitive, when I come back in here, so if this was something important, be like, hey, FuturePOS training is on Tuesday morning, be here at 8:30, like, oh, I didn't get the message. If it wasn't repetitive, you could come in here, you could find their name and be like, oh, it's not checked. You got the message. Or somebody, if you have it set to show it clock in, then somebody else clock them in. Okay, so when they're unselected, that means that they have received the message. Once all of your employees get the message, so I'm going to sign off as that. I'm going to sign in as my manager. Sign in, yes, manager. Okay, my manager received it. Once I go back in here, everybody has received my message. Again, as long as it is not repetitive, message is gone. That means everybody has received it. Okay. You can also go in, you can send a one-time email and text. The email/text is going to send out to whatever the employee preference is in employee maintenance. Okay. This is a cool thing. This is a huge selling point. This is something that end users used all the time. I would say at least half of my end users, if not more, were using this on a regular basis.